There are two things firefighters dislike: the way things are, and change.
Sometimes traditional ways clash with the need for change.
That's where we come in.
Slicing through the noise with insights that matter.
Welcome to Igniting the Shift Within.
Your launch pad to revolutionize the way you think and work and lead.
Welcome to another episode of Igniting the Shift Within. I'm David Dashinger, and today we're diving into tactical strategies to de-stress both on and off the job with our special guest, Tamara Green, LCSW. Tamara brings a wealth of experience as a psychotherapist and loving relationship expert, as well as a unique perspective as the spouse of a retired firefighter. And together we'll discuss tactical strategies to de-stress both on and off the job. We'll also look at how to optimize happiness hormones to effectively combat anxiety and negativity. So whether you're on the front lines or transitioning to life after firefighting, this episode is packed with practical hacks to help you stay grounded and resilient. And Tamara will share 3 tactical takeaways you can use to enhance your wellness, leadership, and performance. So Tamara, let's dive in. Just give us a little background on your sort of life experience as a mental health professional and your connection to the fire service.
Absolutely. It's great to be here. Thank you so much for having me. Well, back in college, when I was, really young, decades ago, I was referred to as the dorm shrink. So I knew early on, if anybody was having a problem, they'd always be knocking on my door crying and whatever. So I knew early on this was my calling. And about the same time, 30 years ago, I married the man of my dreams, and he eventually became a lieutenant firefighter. So we lived with the sometimes uncertainty, we lived with the kind of chaos that kind of job brings into the home and the family.
As a spouse of a firefighter who was on the job and now retired, what have you learned about the job and its culture? Like, what did you kind of see from the insider perspective that firefighters might need to know that their spouses are experiencing, or vice versa?
It's really interesting. I love the introduction to this podcast. It's like, first responders, they don't like the way things are and change.
Yeah.
And I believe that I've experienced that a lot with, the wonderful family of first responders, all the wonderful people we've gotten to know, the brothers and the sisters. And, isn't it the same in family life as well, right? It's like when we're resisting the way things are, well, guess what? We're going to get stressed. If we don't like change, well, guess what? That's all there is in life is change. So there is this thread of a lot of stress about the way things are. And it's such an intense job, so much responsibility, literally lives are in your hands and it's up to you. So I've always appreciated that level of being able to, just in the moment, you're really embracing it. You're right there. You're embracing what's happening and you know what to do. But afterwards, when you come home to the family, that's when you hear all the, oh, I shoulda, I coulda, why didn't I? How come I didn't get that support? And, it's that opening is really quite apropos, actually.
So what are your thoughts on how first responders can better manage the stress? And, obviously it's coming from multiple sources, right? It could be from the family, it could be from administration or doing the calls, or any number of things. Could be financial. What are your thoughts?
Right. Or exhaustion, right? Well, the number one thing that does cause stress is usually not the event itself, not what's actually happening, but our thinking about it, the meaning that we have of that thing that we're experiencing, right? So one of the first things is to really have a practice of, where's my mind going with this? Is it a freight train taking off and losing control? Well, guess what? I'm in control of my mind. And the more you practice this, where you, like for a perfect example is, let me focus on, 3 things I did right in that last call. 3 things that maybe I could have done a little bit better, but 3 things that I can really give myself a lot of accolades for. I mean, just even showing up every day for the job is, something you should always be, patting yourself on the back for.
I think that's a great point. Like, I've spoken to numerous firefighters who have amassed an incredible body of work, with amazing success, helping people, those that are medics or EMTs, helping people medically, and still they'll focus on the ones that didn't go the way they were intending them, or, hoping them to go. We obviously can't control all the factors, but those are the ones that stick with them. They tend to kind of slough off the ones that were, the wins, and focus on the ones that were, didn't go right.
And can I help everyone that's listening why we do that as human beings?
Yeah.
Especially first responders are, you guys are very special in that you're super driven, right? You're very driven to get
Alpha.
it right.
Yeah.
Super like that alpha, type A, it's a really amazing what you're able to do, but you need that level of intensity. But it's also the very thing that can backfire and really create a lot of internal stress, right? What's happening is the ego, whenever we are kind of going in our mind, and I why did I make that decision? Why didn't I, have the guy pull in, like check the back of the building, whatever you're doing, right? That's always the ego that's trying to remain in the driver's seat of your life and, tell you what you did wrong, what you did wrong, what you did wrong. When you begin to master the ego, and the ego then goes in the back seat, is when you, especially right in the middle of you beating yourself up, you literally say, oh, wait a minute. Wait, my ego's doing that thing again. It really wants me to stay scared. The ego is always very fear-based, whereas we actually have something that is, I call it master consciousness, and we have a choice. It's not easy, but we have a choice to focus on, wait, is this the master consciousness thing that I really should be focusing? How about if I just witness the one that's kind of freaking out and really berating myself? And then, very important, you're probably going to hear this a couple more times. This is how I think really transformative it is, and that is forgive yourself. Forgive yourself for whatever you thought you just did wrong. You're always doing the best you can. And it's beyond what most people do in their professions, right? And this is on a daily basis with lack of sleep and, the rest of it.
Yeah, other stressors. And you're absolutely right. We're showing up, obviously, to do the best possible job. And we didn't create, all the circumstances that led up to us being called or dispatched to an incident, yet we kind of take it all on like it's ours, and now we have to fix it all, and it needs to turn out a certain kind of way. If it doesn't, then we messed up.
Right. And there's the meaning. We inject our own meaning, and by the way, that meaning usually doesn't start with us. Just, look at your parents before you, look at what the role models were and what you were hearing constantly. And a lot of first responders unfortunately don't necessarily come from these, super stable, loving, supportive families. Right. So the key is forgive yourself and truly let it go. Just, it's okay. Let it go. And the only way that forgiveness of self or anyone else, let's say it's your chief that you're mad at or something, the only way to really, truly let it go is keep practicing every day or after every call. Who am I willing to forgive? If it's yourself, do it, but do it every day or do it often at the end of a shift, whatever it is. It's very transformative.
So it's like a practice, something you do with regularity.
Absolutely. If I could say one more thing about it, we literally put ourselves into prison when we don't forgive ourselves or anyone else. That prison keeps the old story that we have about ourselves, like, I could just never get it all right, or whatever we tell ourselves, right? Mm-hmm. I'm not good enough. It keeps the old story very, very much alive and running. Mm-hmm. But when you really forgive and let it go, especially with some practice, it may take 30 days in a row or 60 or a year, who knows? You keep letting it go. It's kind of like a layering effect. You literally change the old story. And then you're free to just operate from, something fresh and new, kind of like life is, or this job or this particular call is giving you meaning, versus my old experience, the old story giving this meaning. No. We want to be able to give this meaning to us and not our ego giving this situation meaning, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that would have a huge effect on some of the burnout that we experience. Yes. Compassion fatigue, just, seeing so much of this over years and years, and we get to the point where we lose that spark that, led us to the job in the first place, where, we love doing it. And then some of us get to the point where we're just, we just show up. We don't really show up, fully. We're just showing up to get the job done and no more, no less.
And you're bringing up a really good point, David, and that is, what is the ego doing? It's telling us that we need to protect ourselves. There's always something out there to fear that we need to protect ourselves from. It's not true. It's literally not true. We're not born feeling like we need to protect ourselves. We're not born upset or anxious or depressed or questioning ourselves. We're just not. That is a learned thing over the years, right? So the ego is always wanting to say, really, maybe you shouldn't say anything, or like maybe maybe you should put another layer over your heart and protect your feelings, your emotions. But that just like that's not just putting you in prison. That's just like, blocking the key and throwing the key, down the sewer. It's not good. It's not the way to happiness, actually.
So that segues into the next topic, which may have to do with being in fight or flight. We get into that almost like hypervigilant protective mode because our amygdala is activated by the stress and all the trauma that we're witnessing. So talk a little bit about the psychological or the physiological impacts of chronic stress, and especially like the hormones. We're experiencing hormone dumps when we see trauma, when we get dispatched to a call, just hearing the tones drop and going with lights and sirens. What's the body's response to those high pressure situations? How does that relate to hormones? Yeah.
So, fight or flight, really, again, it's an ego construct. It didn't used to be. It used to be, we needed fight or flight to basically survive, right? And the ego, I'm going to say this piece to answer your question. The ego is very focused on the body, survival, right? Mm-hmm. Protect, whatever, defend. But it's not interested at all in the internal process, the emotions, right? So what's happening is we keep having all the meaning on top of fear, and the ego telling us to protect, and you better be careful, and you're not good enough, and la, 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 that over time, it just becomes one big chaotic mess inside. But meanwhile, the inside is really not being addressed. So what I've, when I'm working with somebody in my practice, it's fascinating to me. They'll say, my husband or my wife, this, that, whatever. And if I say, okay, wait a minute, you're talking about something that you're angry about. What's underneath the anger? Well, I'm afraid that the relationship's not going to last, for example. Okay, so when's the first time you ever felt that? Oh, well, I did go through a divorce or whatever. I said, even before that. And 9.99999 times out of 10, there's always something in childhood that was taken as pretty traumatic and upsetting. And so we kind of look through that lens, for the rest of our life. And that's the old story, right? Oh, nobody really is interested in me and what I have to say, la, la, la. So when we get triggered, guess what? It's an opportunity to actually start asking questions within. Wait a minute. What is that? Like, where is that from? How long ago? How old is this? When's the first time I felt this? Maybe this isn't even mine. Return to sender. This sounds like my dad. This sounds like my mom, right? Return to sender. This isn't mine. Even stuff like that can be very helpful. So every time you get triggered, no, it's not against you. It's for you to actually do some internal self-exploration. And there's so many great books out there, or there's so many great therapists out there, or even techniques out there that can help to dig through all those layers.
What are some examples?
Well, I personally love EFT, emotional freedom technique. And one of the reasons why is because, you're doing some tapping as you're saying some things. You're tapping on your head. So what this is if you've ever been to an acupuncturist or an pressurist, whatever, what they're doing is finding blocked energy. So it's not flowing. When energy is not flowing in Chinese medicine, they call it qi, right? When qi is not flowing, guess what? You don't feel good. When there's stuck energy anywhere, you're upset. You physically don't feel good. You emotionally don't feel good, whatever. So one of the reasons why I love EFT is you're actually talking through the problem as you're kind of tapping these particular tapping point or meridian points. So meridians are invisible energy lines. We all have it that runs through our body, right? So this one right here on this side, I call it the karate chop, right? If you just do this, or let's say you're in line at a store, or you're in front of all of your, coworkers, and you don't want anybody seeing you tap. You just hold it right there and just relax and hold it right there. And what it's doing is opening up the heart. So this is a heart meridian point right here, right? You're tapping up here. You're beginning to open up the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve is what calms the fight-flight response, right? Now, again, you may not want somebody to see you tapping up here, and that's okay. But you can just hold it, kind of like you're just holding your head, or you can hold here. That's fine, right? Or, you can just do this, because right there, this is the kidney meridian line. Kidney holds anxiety. So if you're feeling anxious, just go ahead and pretend like you're thinking, right? And just put your fingers there. And then the other one that people may have noticed from if they've ever done EMDR, which is great work too, it's the kidney on one line and the lung on the other side. And kidney anxiety, lungs kind of is overwhelmed. That's why it's so hard to breathe when you're really overwhelmed and stressed out, right? But you just tap like this, or again, you can just hold it there. You're actually helping the vagus nerve to release the happy, calming hormones like oxytocin and endorphins and dopamine. Can be very helpful. But again, I'm going to say it again, practice really helps. Doing it regularly.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, then I want to tap into your expertise as a relationship expert. There's this whole transitional phase where we come off a 24-hour shift, sometimes 48, sometimes longer. And we need to make that segue into the home world, the world of, what's going on with our wife or our spouse and our kids. So talk a little bit about how can first responders connect with their families in a meaningful way? Kind of what activities or practices do you recommend to bridge the gap between the world of lights and sirens and the world of, diapers and dishes?
That's a good question. Well, one of the things that my husband did that I found extremely helpful was he would call me, of course, not in the middle of the night if he was coming home from a shift late, but he would call me and just start to talk about what happened in the last 24 hours. And if it was something traumatic, I'll never forget the day when Sandy Hook happened and he showed up and, just starting to tell me what was happening. And then it prepared me to actually be just listening and just hold him in my arms and just let him talk, man, let it out and process. So I think making some kind of either text or phone call or something that lets your family member know, listen, I kind of had a pretty stressful 24 hours. And is it okay if, now some people need alone time to process, that's fine. Some people need to go on the computer and play games to transition, that's fine. You just ask for what you need. Do not expect your family member to know what it is that you need in that moment to process or transition or both.
So we were talking about shifting the mindset from the negative to the positive, and it's almost like you can think of it as a tape loop running in our brain, maybe where it's a repeating negative self-limiting belief that we've carried it since childhood. Maybe it's been more recent, but what are some ways we can kind of reframe that and change the message on that loop to something positive?
Yeah. I've done so many different things in my own life throughout the years. I'll tell you, one of the most powerful ones was actually writing on Post-it notes and sticking them all over my house and car and inside my medicine cabinet. So basically every room I went into, it reminded me like, oh yeah. And what I wrote was, the universe has my back. And every time I was right, there's nothing to fear. I don't have to worry about a thing. The universe has my back. Some people like to write, God has my back, or Jesus has my back, or whatever that is for you. That's one. The other is, like I was saying earlier, and I've done this quite a bit myself, is we're not born with these negative thoughts. They are learned. And we probably learned them from each generation before us, right? So you can actually say, you know what, this isn't mine, return to sender. No, not mine, return to sender. Not mine. You just keep repeating it over and over until you begin to feel like, okay. And then maybe a third one would be, and again, it's one of the hardest things as human beings have to do, but is to catch ourselves in negative thinking and then immediately come up with maybe the opposite of what we're telling ourselves. You're saying, I'm not good enough. Oh, okay, wait a minute. I'm more than good enough. I am more than good enough.
I know some people that use their home screen or their lock screen on their cell phone to have a message that they're just going to see it every time they pick up their phone. So it's like a high-tech version of the Post-it, but it's a quick, easy way to keep
Right.
keep that message in your front of mind all the time.
Yeah, it speaks to immersion. You want to immerse yourself. Whatever you're reading, whatever you're watching on TV, whatever you're listening to, podcast, just immerse yourself in that positivity.
Which is a great point, because first responders tend to see a lot of the worst of humanity and very, distressing, disturbing incidents and human behavior, disturbing human behavior sometimes,
Right.
not only outside doing the calls, but sometimes within the agency, either from administration or coworkers or some kind of internal, negative behaviors. And that can lead to what we could call toxic negativity within the agency. And how do we combat that? How do we kind of first become aware of that we're getting pulled into it? And then how do we kind of pull ourselves out of it? What are some of the suggestions you have for that?
All right. I'm going to say something that it's really hard for the ego the ego hates this. It's not personal. Whatever you think is, being directed at you, guess what? It has nothing to do with you. There's a little caveat to that, but the person that's slinging something at you or not supporting you or not hearing you or whatever it may be, that's their stuff, not yours. What is yours, and here's the caveat, is if you're triggered, well, guess what? It just activated something, like you said, in the amygdala, some stored memory, right? And again, our experience, we start to see life that way. If we're focused on, I never catch a break, la, 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 whatever. Well, guess what? You see everything. You're not seeing the stuff that's just right there in front of you and the universe is trying to give it to you. It's more like you focus on the things where you're not getting a break, right? So it's about eventually taking that lens off and then putting on a brand new pair of possibilities. So it's not personal. It really isn't personal. Our job when we're triggered is to say, okay, let me just, again, forgiveness. Let me just forgive that person, forgive myself for getting triggered. But now let me use this as an opportunity to go within. And I don't know if people want to journal or have time to journal. It's a fantastic way to begin to just kind of free associate, I'm so angry. One of the things that I have my clients do is I say, I want you to email me and make sure in the subject line you put rant or vent. I want you to just let it rip, use curse words, whatever you want, but don't hold back. Just let it rip. Right? Then you got to come back within 30 minutes. You got to send me another email and give me 3 things that you're grateful for. So what are you doing? You're letting out, right? And then you are reframing, because your mind will create new neural pathways in your brain, right? Coming back and focusing on what you're grateful for. So it's all about what you're focusing on is what you tend to experience more of. So if you want calmer, happier tomorrow, well, guess what? You need to get that stuff out. Don't hold it in, get it out in a constructive way, but then come back and reframe.
So while you were talking about that, kind of if we tune our minds to see the negative, that's what we keep seeing, right? I was thinking of, if you buy a red Corvette, or you want a red Corvette, that's like your dream car, and you go out and you're driving around, you start seeing red Corvettes everywhere. It's almost like we've got that selective attention, right? And same thing, if we flip, we decide we want to focus on the positive, the same principle applies, right? We're really going to start to notice more of that rather than the negative.
Absolutely. Yeah. You're literally taking off the negative pair of glasses and putting on a new pair of going, wait, I see really fun things here. This is exciting. It's fascinating how it works, but I can't emphasize how important the practice. Just keep doing it. Whatever that practice is, keep doing it every day, every day, every day, every day. Makes such a big difference.
This is the time when we're going to ask you to share 3 tactical takeaways. They're actionable items that firefighters can use to enhance their health, their performance, and their leadership. What would you like to share with us?
Forgive yourself. Let it go. Focus on what you're grateful for so you can get more things that you're grateful for. Okay? I'm considering that number 1. Number 2, immerse yourself, surround yourself in positive, whatever you're reading, you're listening to, the TV, it helps so much. Those Post-it notes or the things on your computer to constantly remind yourself. And the last one is that constant reframing. Catch yourself. You'll get better and better with practice, but catch yourself in negativity and know, return to sender or whatever. But now let me say the opposite of what I'm telling myself in that moment, or even about other people, Just reframe it.
Okay, great. And as far as your strategy for the negativity, or immerse yourself in positive influences rather than negative. I think sometimes we really have to just remove ourselves from the environment. Like if there's a a complaining bitch session happening in the kitchen at the firehouse, I would just walk out. I mean, I just didn't want to be around it. I'd rather be outside, talking to somebody who's a positive person in the firehouse. It's a choice we can make, right? We can choose what we consume on social media, TV, what kind of movies we watch. Those things all feed into our, kind of positive or negative mindset. So that's a great tip.
Yeah. Choice is it, man. We all have choice, even though we think we don't, but we always operate from choice. Always.
Great. Okay. Well, thanks so much for sharing all this, and let us know, where can people find you? Internet, website, social media, any of that stuff?
Well, I know in the show notes you're going to have my YouTube channel and Facebook, and but a great place to reach out to me is my website, tamaragreen.me.
Thanks again for being with us. We appreciate all your tips and strategies, and hopefully people will find them helpful.
Thank you so much. It was great being here.
So thanks for watching Igniting the Shift Within. Join us next time to hear more from the game changers shaping our profession. You can check out our website at podpage.com/igniting, and make sure you like and follow Firefighter Nation on YouTube, Facebook, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and firefighternation.com. Till the next time, stay safe, stay connected, keep igniting the shift within.
There are two things firefighters dislike: the way things are, and change.
Sometimes traditional ways clash with the need for change.
That's where we come in.
Slicing through the noise with insights that matter.
Welcome to Igniting the Shift Within.
Your launch pad to revolutionize the way you think and work
And lead.